Yeah, businessman and Labour supporter John Mill's new book is Left Behind: Why Voters Deserted Social Democracy and How to Win Them Back. In it, he argues the Labour Party is facing an existential crisis. And he's with me now. So what's gone wrong for Labour?
Well, what's gone wrong for social democracy? Labour's doing quite well.
Is it?
Well,
20% in the polls, not brilliant.
Yes, but it's not sort of fading away in the same way that social democracy has. And if you look at what's happened over the whole of the Western world over the last 20 years, in 2000, almost all governments had social democrats in charge, or they were a large part of a coalition. Now, almost none do. So it's social democracy which I'm really concerned about more than what you might call democratic socialism.
Yeah, but I mean, the implication of that is Labour is no longer a social democratic party.
I think it has moved significantly to the left. Yes, I think that's correct. And I think the trouble is that there's 20% or something of the population that like that sort of politics, but it's difficult to get a majority with that approach.
But I mean, the suggestion would be, with the attractions of Brexit, the attractions of Boris Johnson's Conservative Party and Jeremy Corbyn, that people don't want that centrist social democratic message anymore.
Well, clearly they don't. They're not voting for it. The question is, why don't they? And that's what really the book's all about. And the book says that the reason why social democracy's lost its appeal is partly because social democratic governments haven't been very good at producing reasonable rates of economic growth, and as a result, wages have stagnated, partly because the redistributive agenda they had hasn't worked very well, and partly because a big cultural gap opened up. And I think all of these three issues need to be addressed.
But you see, you had the Blair-Brown government, certainly in the Blair government, there was consistent growth, and there was over that period a slight diminution in inequality. Won 3 elections, yet people don't want to go near that kind of thing now. They don't want to go near the Liberal Party, for example.
Well, I think that's right, but I think what happened really was the crash in 2008 and the very, very slow recovery from that, which has meant that for the last 10 years or so, most people in this country have received little or no wage increases at all, while some of the richer people have done very much better. And this has produced a huge amount of resentment, and has soured our politics and sociology and left us in the state we're in at the moment.
And also resulted in perhaps the vote for Brexit, which you're very much in favour of.
Well, I think the vote for Brexit was partly caused by this, yes, and partly by the huge gap there is between London and the rest of the country, which I think is something that drove the Brexit vote.
But you would like to see social democracy reconstructed, coming back in?
Yes, I certainly would.
And how do you think that can be rebuilt?
Well, I think that what social democrats need to do is to take a hard look at what our economic priorities are. At the moment, we're still stuck, I think, in the kind of neoliberal straitjacket of saying that the one thing we must do is keep inflation down. I think actually getting the growth rate up is much more important than keeping inflation at 2% rather than, say, 3%.
And how would you do that? More borrowing, more government spending, Keynesianism?
Well, I think that we need to invest more, but we need to invest more also in the areas that really do produce economic growth. And I think it's quite a narrow range of opportunities. It's around technology and mechanisation and power and very little else. But their natural home is in the private sector, particularly in the internationally tradable private sector. And I think the trouble is that if you chase inflation down all the time, you finish up an exchange rate that's too high, you finish up with balance of payments problems, you finish up with investment in these really productive areas not being economical and profitable, and it doesn't happen. And that's why the productivity growth in this country is so slow.
Well, it's not even growing, it's going backwards according to latest figures.
Well, I think it is, but the reason for this is because the amount of money we're spending on technology and mechanisation and power is less than the depreciation of existing assets.
So if you want that, who should you vote for?
Well, I think what we need to have is a political party, which I hope will be the Labour Party, with a more social democratic agenda and a higher growth rate. OK.
John Mills, thank you very much indeed. His new pamphlet from Civitas is called Left Behind. Thank you. Lots more to